How's everybody doing? Let's try that again. How's everybody doing? There we go. I like the energy. 你不怎样了呢呀？你should step up. Okay. Yeah, I wanted just to let her know, and I think a lot of us parents can relate to her story, the things that she say. I think when we hold that little baby for the first time, as a parent, never in our mind would we ever think that we would end up burying that baby. And I think that's something so hard to go through. I can't imagine the pain that we went through, and as a parent, I feel for me. Has anybody, just by show of hands, and you don't have to raise a hand if you don't want to, is anybody, or do you know anybody who took their own life by suicide? Okay, about 80% of the room. I do too. And I think one of the strangest things about a person who committed suicide is that it leaves us with more questions than answers. And it leaves us wondering. It's almost like this void in our heart that we just can't seem to plug or can't seem to heal. And I hope that we have more conversations, because I think the healing process happens when we tell their story. Telling their story so that you can touch the lives of other people, so they too can find that glimpse of hope that he was talking about. It is that string of hope that allows us to heal. So with that today, let's talk about the unseen struggle of men in general. I want to just first start by saying that while I'm putting an emphasis on us men, this also, of course, relates to the women in the room as well. Boys, girls, all of us, it is our mental well-being. I want to say that this workshop here is going to be interactive. I don't want to be talking as much, because that would defeat the purpose of what I'm doing, which is I'm trying to advocate for decreasing the silence and advocating for your voices to be louder so that you can speak your story, share your spoken truth, so that this silence can start to diminish. And so you will be doing a lot of talking, a lot more than I am, I hope so that you can use your voice to uplift others in the room as well. In this workshop here, what we'll do is we'll explore some of the hidden struggles that men carry. We talked about this extensively already, but let's talk about even more, some of the cultural pressure, the cultural factors that make it so hard for us men to even have a conversation about our struggles. Some of this identity struggle, I was just having a conversation briefly here about us Hmong individuals growing up here in the United States. We've been socialized in an environment to the point where sometimes we've lost parts of ourselves that we didn't even know. And identity is so core to us, which is our Hmong language and our Hmong culture. And I remember growing up, I wondered what was missing. I felt empty. And I didn't realize this until maybe 7 years ago, that what was missing was my language and my history. And I've lost it along the way because of how embarrassed I was to be Hmong. Again, if you want to share, you can, but did anybody just growing up distance yourself from being called a Hmong type day? Oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about, the laughs. Okay, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember growing up, I'm like, no, I don't want to be a part of these Hmong type day people. I'm the cool American Hmong boy over here. I hated that. When they call me an MTT or Hmong type day, I'm like, I hated that so bad. And so I wanted to distance myself so far from that I wanted to perfect my English so that I don't say, I love you too. But I ended up saying, I love you, right? With a calm American voice. And I remember just doing that, but while I perfected something, I lost something important, so core to me. And I didn't realize that until maybe 7 years ago. That was my language. That was my identity. So we'll talk about some of those pieces. More importantly, having honest conversations. What are some tools, some things that we can use to break the silence? How do we express our emotions without feeling shame, without feeling embarrassed, without having that little clog in our throat, so we can actually speak our truth and speak about our experiences? What are we going to do with the objectives here? Well, let's understand some of the cultural pieces. What are some of the societal pressures that's really shaping our mental health? Recognizing the struggle, the emotional suppression, what's driving them, and also, again, the identity part. And then what are ways to cope, ways to communicate, and ways to connect? So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to do a warm-up. It's a real talk check-in. I want you to, at your table here, think about a time you felt you had to stay strong. A time where you had to stay strong and hide what you were feeling. And what did that cost you? This is the part where you practice that with the people around you. So turn to the person next to you and share maybe 1 or 2 minutes from your part and let them also share their stories with you too. So let's do that real quick here.
Alright, boys. Looks like we're getting booted out. Men will be men over here. I figured that. I don't know if it's just get this single. What was the question again? Stay strong. When I got
All right, let's come back together as a big group here. I know this is something that probably a lot of us can experience, and the cost can be pretty big. This is what I want. I want continuation conversations, no silence. But thank you though. I just want to hear from maybe one group, if anybody wants to kind of summarize and talk quickly about their experiences. What did it cost you when you were silent or didn't talk much about your experiences? You had to stay strong. There's one group who wants to share. All right.
This is not from me, but this is
let me ask you real quick. Just make it fun. Can you choose one sea animal for your group, just so we can like identify your group?
crap.
A crab, all right. Crab group. All right, what's your?
Okay, so this is not a story from me, but this is a story lesson that I often learn from Lee Tsai, if you're familiar with him. He said one day, เขาได้มา learn 到一点说一只狗了可以有去包了也可以撒我脑了呢 So his experience was that in New York called and it cost $10, and as a student he asked the lieutenant, say, hey, can you just give it to me for 7? I'm a student. And his daughter said, Dad, so he gave the wrong change. He gave the wrong change back to Lee Tsai. And his daughter said, Dad, you gave him the wrong change. Then the dad refused, and the dad verbally fought with his daughter, and then eventually Lee Tsai said, yes, it is wrong. So now, because he made that, because of that situation, it caused a long lesson story that Lee Tsai continued to mock.
I see. All right. So time was taken. I saw one more hand. We can probably do one more as well. Where's that hand? All right. Choose one land animal. What's a land animal for your group?
A night animal?
Land.
Or land animal?
Land. Night animal.
Oh, it's night out there. Give me no options. What do you guys like? Oh, just pick one. A whale. What?
I've never seen a whale in that before.
See? No, not putting it aside. Elephant. Oh.
Elephant, right. Elephant group. Let's go for it.
I'm done talking. I'm done talking. I guess according to a point where I had to stay strong was when I was going to get married. My wife is right here. The problem was that her wife. That land animal was getting married. Anyways, her father is well known in Appleton. So when I was approached to get married, they wanted me to go ask for the hand of marriage to get her. But then when I came back to my side of the family, they said that no, bring her back to us, so we get the home field advantage. I didn't know what that means, so I was young, dumb. didn't know what to say, what to do. So I thought that my side of the family was kind of disrespecting her side of the family. It was like, no, I kind of want to go and pay the respect to her side of the family because it was well known. Not only just that, but then I had to stay strong for both sides, but at the same time, I was in a battle for myself. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Should I go this way? Should I go that way? You know, I didn't want to disrespect both sides, but at the long run, I avoided my side of the family because I thought that they were disrespecting me. So, and then at the end, we finally got to a point where we could clash together, where her side of the family started trampling my side of the family, and everything came together. I felt so. The main thing was that for me to try to stay strong for both sides, but at the same time, I was battling my own inner war. Like, what do I do? Am I ever going to get married to her? And I was sitting and thinking to myself, how about you come and ask for my hand in there? I was that nervous. Like, you come to me. So I was really, really battling with that. And but at the end, we got married. So I guess that's what really matters. And both the side of the family appreciate what we have gone through. And so, yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
That's awesome.
Go out!
You're here, yeah, go elephant. Yeah, you know, sometimes you get caught in this position where trying to be strong actually works against you. You know, I think about trying to be strong. I even think about like a birthday party, for example. Sometimes during birthday parties, you get really emotional, or during graduation, you get really emotional, and you wanna just experience that moment. You feel the tears coming on, tears of joy. Yet you don't want to be perceived in a negative light, so you hold those tears in and you don't get to fully experience that moment. And so it costs you a lot of things. And so earlier I talked about how sometimes it costs us connection, either with ourselves and people around us. It costs us our own honesty and being real with ourselves. It costs us our health. And sometimes it costs us our lives. And so I really like what Team Elephant said here. Sometimes we just got to talk it out. Sometimes this internal battle by ourselves is what's really keeping us from finding the answer that we're looking for. Maybe talking out loud is the way to go. Why is that important, especially for us men? Well, this morning we heard about the stats. When it comes to suicide is one of the number one leading causes of death. If we look more closely at those stats, we can see that according to the CDC, that men does die by suicide approximately 4 times than women. Of course, we also talked about how men have more not they have more access, but they use more lethal means to finish it, to finish things off. And men are less likely to seek therapy. You know, it's a funny thing, I'm reading this because right now on my caseload, most of my clients are men. 90% are men. So I'm starting to see a shift in it. But the thing is that the men that I work with, they're not Hmong. I don't have any Hmong clients at all who are men, which leaves me scratching my head still. And I think there's a real cultural piece attached to it. I mean, we talked about this before already, and I think we touched on a lot of different factors, but one thing I want to just touch on that I didn't really hear amidst the conversation is that in the Hmong community too, the reason why the stigma is so strong is that we want to save face. That's a big piece. I remember growing up and my parents would say things like, whatever. And all these things, and it's so hard to hear that, especially you're like, but I want to start a life, like that doesn't really matter to me. I want to start a life with this person, but there's this aspect of saving face. And so if I were to admit that I'm struggling, and I'm part of this family, I might be the talk of the town. The sound of human voice is much louder than the crack of thunder. And that's so true. Once one person starts talking, it spreads like wildfire. We may be a big community and we're scattered throughout the world, but that little small chit-chat can eventually bloom. And it can grow and it can spread throughout the world. Especially now with social media too. And so we're so afraid of that. Sometimes we would choose to save face than the lives of some of the people who are close to us. So it makes it so hard for us to even admit that we're struggling, that we're going through a tough time. There's so many different factors. So one way to deal with that for a lot of us men is we just gotta stay strong, push through. Because our ancestors did it, our parents did it, my dad did it, why can't I do it? Even though I'm washed with shame, I'm gonna try it anyways. And what does it cost us? It costs us our health. It costs us relationships. It costs us our relationship with our kids in the ways that we parent as well. So we're actually going to do a word cloud here. And the question that we're going to answer here is, what were you told about what it means to be a man? What were you told, either directly or indirectly, about what it means to be a man? And the reason why we're doing this is hopefully we're taking time to reflect and uncover maybe some of these biases that we've been holding on to. Things that we think a man should be. Maybe there are certain traits that are part of being a masculine man. That may be good. Maybe there are things that we hold on so tightly that we don't leave room for flexibility. So I'm going to throw my wife under the bus today. She's here. I'm going to share a story about me and my wife, and she gave me permission to share this story. And we'll go to this here. So my son, he plays basketball. He's in the basketball league. And I'm his dad coach. I'm not really his coach, I'm his coach off the court at home. And you know, as a parent, when you have someone who's playing sports, you want to see them do well. They suck, but you tell them they're doing great anyways. But, you know, I tell my son, like, I'm hard. I'm like, if he's not making the right jumper, I'm like, bro, you're missing the point. You know, you're not, footwork is off, your wrist is not, you're not holding your shot. So I'm hard on my son, right? So we're at the park, we're playing basketball, and then we do some drills. And I'm trying to teach him the crossover, and I'm like, just do it like this, so easy, why can't you do it? He's like getting upset. And so every time he misses it, I'm like, we're gonna do 10 layups. And so he finally does it, and he misses it, he does 10 layups, and he grabs the basketball, and he just chucks it. He's upset, he's furious. And I see this, and it's happening, and I know it's gonna happen. I know he's getting frustrated, I see his anger, and he's getting very, very furious. And so he does it, he throws the basketball, and my wife instantly jumps in. Like, she didn't even wait. The moment that ball flew, she jumped in right away. What does my wife say? She shouts to my son, if you're gonna do that, then we're gonna go home. And what did I do? Oh, my psychology hat came on right away, my therapist hat. I said, no, don't do that. No, shh, don't say that right now. Because in that moment, what I was doing with my son was, I knew he was getting furious. I knew I could tone it down a little bit as a coach. But at the same time, there's a second thing I was trying to do with my son. I wanted him to access something deep in him that maybe he was holding on to and he's not familiar with, which is his anger. Because he's a funny guy, he jokes around all the time. Rarely do you see him upset. But when he was upset on the court, I'm like, whoa, something's happening here. Never seen this anger before. This rage that suddenly started to boil. And when he exploded, me in my eyes, I'm like, this is my moment to walk him through it. My wife jumps in, she almost shut it down, like, no, This is between me and my son. Let me work with my son right now. So I'm talking to my son, I'm coaching, he's upset, I'm working with him. And that's something that I want us to talk about or to think about today too, is what are some things that maybe we expect for our boys, for our men? Unconsciously, or maybe the biases that we hold on to that we forget, and it comes out sometimes. And not that it helps, but actually hinders them from their growth. What are some things that we hold on to that maybe we might be hindering our husbands from growing, our brothers, our friends? So let me pull up the word cloud real quick here. Sorry, a second here. All right, here's the word cloud. So what you can do here is take out your phone, scan this QR code right here, and start typing in your answer. It helps if we're really honest about what comes up for us. Not judging what comes up, we're just using this time to just reflect on what comes up for us when we hear this question, when we think about what it means to be a man, what comes up for you instantly. Don't judge it, don't change your answer, roll with it. And if you've never done a word cloud before, how the word cloud works is The frequency of the word makes the word bigger. So right now, what I see that's pretty big on the screen is the word strong and provider. The more you input that word, the bigger that word gets. All right, let's take a look at some of these words here. So obviously, the big words are in the middle here. So what does it mean to be a man? Well, you got to be strong. You got to be a provider, the protector, breadwinner, a leader, tough, brave, don't cry, alpha, that's another one's big, lead. So these are all the things that maybe we were taught growing up that you need to embody this in order to be a man. Is it wrong to be strong? I don't think so. Is it wrong to be a provider? I don't think so as well. Or protector. I think these are all great traits to have. But if that is the only thing that we're expecting a man to be, that can also be very crushing for a man when they don't meet those standards. You know, we were having a conversation at our table earlier about the delivery room. And I'll share that I think a lot of men who have kids, who are parents, who are fathers in this room probably could relate to this. And we're talking about how the father in the room, sometimes, I've seen this before and I've done this before myself. Sometimes when you go see a new baby at the hospital, you walk in and what's happening? Maybe baby is with mom or baby is in the little crib next to mom. And then where's dad? He's kicked over. He's knocked out. And he's sleeping, right? And I find myself doing that all the time too. We have 4 kids, and all 4 kids, I'm exhausted. And so sometimes you might think, what the heck? What's he doing? Why is he all kicked over? He did nothing. He's just here. But let me fight for the men today. Okay? Let me fight for the men today. Let me put in a word for the men today. Did the man really do nothing? No. Physically, maybe not so much. But mentally, he probably ran a marathon. He was that strong emotional support. Yeah, physically he couldn't do nothing. I'm going to share with you a personal story with my 4th child. My wife went to labor. We went to the labor delivery room, and she's laying in the bed. The doctor comes, the nurse comes, they're examining her, and they're like, oh, we need to put you in the water. Maybe that might help with your dilation. So she goes into the water, she dilates on the centimeter, like, all right, you gotta come back out. She comes back out, she's laying on the bed. They're rotating the baby, everything seems to be going well. The nurse comes in, examines the baby, and says, okay, baby's good, nurse leaves. Shortly after the nurse leaves, the machine starts beeping. And I'm sitting there watching them, like, oh no, something's wrong. And I look at the screen and what's happening, her blood pressure is dropping. So I call the nurse in, the nurse comes in. The nurse checks the screen, looks at my wife. I look at my wife, her face is pale. She looks like she was dying. So the nurse was like, this doesn't look good. So the nurse was like, let me call the rest of the team in. Calls the doctor in, they're looking at my wife. My wife starts shaking in the bed. They call more people in. They call whatever the code was. I forgot what code it was. The rest of the team comes into the room. And at that point, my wife is literally shaking like she was having a seizure. The whole time, what was I doing? I felt helpless. I couldn't be strong. I couldn't be the protector. I want to protect my wife. I want to protect my kids, to protect my baby. But at that moment, I felt helpless. I even tried asking the nurse, like, what's going on? And nobody answered me because they had something more important to take care of. And so they were working with my wife, and I'm over here wondering, what can I do? What can I do? And everybody ignored me. The doctor comes in, does the examination again. He looks up in the clear. I just still remember this. He looks at me, and then he looks at the nurse standing next to the bed. And he says, get the OR ready. Get the OR ready. Call the team. Tell them, he says, that's it. That's all he said. I don't think he wanted me to know what it was. He said, call the team, get the OR ready, tell them that's it. So my wife shaking, starting to, I don't know what was happening. She couldn't even sign a consent form. She was shaking. They helped her hand come up just to sign a consent form before they rushed her off to the OR room. They give me a gown. They're like, we'll come get you in about a few minutes here. Put the gown on. I put the gown on. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm almost in tears, but I'm like, I need to be strong. I need to be here to contain the situation for my wife. I'm having anxiety. I'm panicking. I'm like, is my wife going to die? Is my baby going to die? The nurse comes in and says, we'll be right back. Put the gown on. I put the gown on. I'm waiting. I'm looking at my clock. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. In my head, I'm thinking, my wife is dead. And here I am doing nothing as her husband. I can't go back. They won't let me go back. I can't even leave the room. I wouldn't know where to go. They won't let me leave the room. They told me to stay here. I'm staying here. I feel helpless. 20 minutes later, the nurse comes in. I get up. She pushes my daughter in. And I see my daughter and I'm crying. At that point, I'm bawling. I'm like, where's my wife? They're like, she's okay. She's just in the recovery. And while I did nothing as a husband, I think I remember just this pressure that I need to be strong. I need to be the provider, the protector, but I couldn't even do that. Not only was I trying to do this, but I was also wrestling with this feeling of guilt and shame. What good am I as a man if I can't even do this to protect my family? If I can't even help my wife and my baby? And so, yeah, I might be kicked over when you walk in, but I ran a marathon in my head. And so I think it's important to check in on the husbands too when you see a baby in the hospital. And as men, when you show up in the hospital, check in on your boy too. Ask him how he was. You doing okay? I saw you kicked over there. You doing good? You might say, all right, but he was struggling. So there's an expectation for us to be strong, to be a provider and protector. And while that may be great, sometimes if we hold on to that too tightly, that may hinder us from growing. It's not helping us so much in some ways. Let me see. So, what is the hidden cost? Well, the hidden cost is emotional suppression leads to stress. Well, the stress is what we hide. And then also we suppress anger, and then we end up isolating. One of the things that I noticed about the anger when I talked about my son is he was angry, but he did his best to try to hold it in. I know a lot of people who have a lot of stress, they try to hide it, and they suppress it, and they end up isolating. We talked about signs and symptoms earlier when it comes to depression in men, or at least depression in general. I want to just make a clear distinction here for some of us providers and even for family and friends too. When we think of depression, I bet you the word that comes to mind and the picture you see is a person who is sad, a person who is hunched over, hands in their face, covering their face. And while that may be true, it may not always look like that when it comes to men. A man might not put his hands in his face and hunched over. He might not look like he's sad or crying. In fact, for a man, it may look like irritability. He might be quick to anger. Every little small thing triggers him. He might be up late at night playing video games. He might start picking up drinking, drowning himself in his sorrow. So it may not always look like how it shows up in the DSM-5. Because for men and women, we deal with things differently, right? We suppress our emotions. We've mastered that. We've earned a PhD in emotional suppression. So when we hold things in, I think about this meme, Arthur, he's got his fist. He's upset. I talk to my clients too. Some of my clients share with me that that's what they did growing up. They didn't know how to express that anger, so they squeeze themselves so hard that they're almost passing out because they don't know how else to do it. And some even say, if I express my anger, then I get my butt whooped. So they can't even safely express it. But the challenge and the issues we're noticing with this is that men, we have a lot of anger at times, a lot of stress, but we hide it. So silent suffering, what does it do? Well, it affects our mental and our physical well-being. It starts to decline. It hurts us. So we start to disconnect from our family. We might even start building resentment towards ourselves and the people around us. But the physical health is the one I want to talk about. The signs and symptoms we're talking about earlier, sometimes the signs and symptoms for men, when they start complaining, is I'm having headaches all the time. I have muscle tension or pain. I have chest pain, fatigue, change in sex drive. Women, pay attention. If something's happening, you might want to check in. Upset stomach, I think someone talked about that earlier, there's the somatic symptoms. It's easier to talk about the physical symptoms than the emotional symptoms. It's easier to say I have stomach pain than saying I'm anxious. And so some of the mood that you might be seeing is if they're having headaches, maybe they're dealing with anxiety. If they're fatigued, maybe there's a lot of memory problems. They have a lot of foggy thoughts or foggy memory. The upset stomachs, I mean, it could be that they're dealing with anger, putting things in, holding things in, arch their fist. And all these symptoms are starting to come up. And so it's important that we pay attention to these signs and symptoms because in our Hmong culture, or the Hmong community overall, what do you think are the top health issues, at least for men? Heart attack, yep. Cardiovascular issues, yep. Hypertension, yep. What else? Gout. Who said that? Oh man, you know what? I gotta tell a story. Let me tell you a story about gout, okay? And I heard the story. I heard the story from a friend. Not my story, okay? He was like, you know why us Hmong men, why we have gout? I'm like, maybe eat too much pork. He's like, no, I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm gonna tell you why. So he told me the story. He said, the reason why let me share that first. The Hmong bang nu is I don't like this bang nu at all. It perpetuates this idea of male dominance. I don't like it at all. But I'm gonna use it because I think it's quite relevant to talk about how culture is so dynamic and we can change culture too. Culture is not static. So I'm gonna translate for the folks that are not Hmong here. If your pepper is too spicy, give it a little bit of salt. If your wife is acting up, give her the boot. That's why I don't like it. So what did he say? He was like, because topping out the can blow on但是都做啲佢咪搞得嘅，我咪搞做ใจ路空啦。嘅我不撇嘅三隻啦，人猜就只嘛更高了嘅，那你爭個豆嘅，冇個豆腐喎。We laughed. I'm like, you know, that's so true. It is true. But that's what reminded when you said gout. But yes, gout is another problem in our community. Cardiovascular disease. Another big piece is diabetes as well. But I want to touch on the cardiovascular part because it's the stress piece that we hold in, the emotions that we suppress. And over time, we have all these stress hormone called cortisol that starts to affect our organs and our system. So how do we safely release that so that it doesn't get to that point? We talk about Hmong people or men being silent. There's also a silent killer as well, which is what? Hypertension. You don't know that it's happening. But by the time you know it, you've already had a stroke. So how do we safely let the pressure out of this soda bottle that's been shaken up for many years and put back on the shelf and the bubbles are gone, but it's still pressurized on the inside? How do we slowly let the cap off so that we're not suppressing these emotions, so it's not affecting our relationships, so it's not affecting our overall health? So why is this so hard? I think we talked about this already earlier. There's this fear of judgment. I fear that if I open up, people are going to call me names. People are going to judge me. Oh, you little wuss. Quit your crying. Big boys don't cry. What are you crying for? Another big piece is that we lack language for emotions. There's a term in psychology called alexithymia. Does anybody know what that means? Ever heard that word before? So alexithymia means there's a lack of ability to identify emotions and to experience emotions. And who struggles with this the most? Men. We didn't grow up around this language. We didn't grow up talking about emotions. After a breakup, we don't go talking to other men and eat ice cream and watch Netflix. No, we go out and fish. We pretend like nothing ever happened. Oh man, come on, you good. Let's go fishing. We put things away. We don't have the language to even start the conversation at times. And then again, the cultural norms that keeps us from having this conversation is that, man, real men don't cry. What you doing? What you crying for? Buckle up. Pull up your bootstrap. Let's get out. Let's fish. And then when we look at the people around us, there are no models of vulnerability. We look at the men around us and no one's trying to cry because nobody wants to be labeled or named. And so everybody's pretending. Everyone's performing all the time. But deep down inside, we know something's happening. So today what we're going to do is we're going to find some tools for healing. Number one, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to name it to tame it. If you can't name it, you can't tame it. So we're going to practice emotional vocabulary. Number two is I want you to build brotherhood. You see, men, we need other men. That's the part that we're missing. We isolate, we don't want to talk, we don't want to be judged, so we keep to ourselves, but the longer we keep to ourselves, the more the silent killer starts to eat us up from the inside. So men, we need other men to have conversations. I don't know who's done this before, but men in the room, have you ever had a conversation with another man where both of you were able to put your mask down, lower your guard, and you had a heart-to-heart conversation? The only time I shouldn't say the only time, but most of the time I see this happen is when? Yeah, you know it. The birthday parties we talked about earlier. Right? When the Bud Light kicks in and the men are hugging each other. Oh, I love you, man. I love you, bro. I love you, I love you. Like, what's going on? I love you. It's 30 minutes that I still love you. But if you start listening to the conversation, what do you hear? They start bringing up the things that are eating them up on the inside. I love you, man. But man, where were you? Where were you when I got divorced? When my dad died? I needed you, man. Where were you? These things start to come out. But it's only when they're able to lower their guard with the intake of alcohol, where they're unable to inhibit this vulnerability piece. So it starts to come up and they have this conversation. Sometimes they even break out in fights. And then the next day they wake up and they sober up. What do you think happens? Back to normal. We pretend like it never happened. But deep down inside, I bet you they know that moment was a very special moment. Because they finally were able to let go of that mask and put the guard down. They can actually finally be human and have that conversation. You know, I know this because I have lived experience. I was the one that says, I love you all the time. And that voice you hear, I love you, that's my mom's voice. She was the one telling me all the time, like, you don't know nothing, Mom, but my mom was right. And to someone's point earlier about the alcohol part, that's also correct. Imagine if you could remove the alcohol part. You don't need that anymore to show your true self. What that would do, if you could just engage in that conversation with your friends and have that real talk in the absence of alcohol, what that will be like. To model that for our boys in the next generation. So building a brotherhood is so important. And if you don't want to do that, you want to start off small, maybe seeking help. Go into therapy, see a professional. As we mentioned earlier, going and seeking help is not a sign of weakness, it's courage, it's bravery. It's modeling to other people that it's okay. I'm struggling, but I'm going to get help. Because it ends here. This toughness I need to hold up all the time, it ends here. And I want to be human. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to work on number one. We're going to practice emotional vocabulary. I want you to pull out, if you have your program in front of you or a piece of paper, in 1 minute, okay, only 1 minute, no more than 1 minute, I want you to write down as many emotions and feelings as you can do in 1 minute, right? Don't start yet. Everybody just get their pens and pencils and their paper ready. Don't do it yet. I'm gonna time us. Okay, so the pamphlet, there's some notes, some sections. Okay, yep. Oh yeah, on the back side, good. All right, get your notepad ready, get your pens ready. Make sure we get exactly 1 minute. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Don't think about it. Whatever comes to mind when you think about emotions and feelings, write it down. Fifteen more seconds. Three, 2, 1, stop. All right, pens down. All right, go ahead and count how many emotions and feelings you wrote down. Okay, so I need all participation for this next part. If you have at least one written down, please raise your hand. I better see all hands up. All right, good. And as I raise the numbers, put your hands down if it doesn't apply to you anymore. Who has at least 2 written down? Okay, keep those hands up. If it applies to you, just keep your hands up. Who has at least 5 written down? Keep your hands up. Who has at least 8 written down? Hands up. Okay, some hands went down there. Who has at least 10? Keep your hands up. Oh man, you're starting to prove my theory correct. Who has at least 13? Okay, who has at least 15? Who has at least 20 or more? All right, so it looks like we have one hand over there. All right, so my theory was, of course, that the women will outplay the men when it comes to emotions, and I was right. Why? Well, as we talked about before, man, we weren't socialized to learn how to use this language. I gave the example earlier that for men, our crayon box is only 8 crayons. So in this room, I just want to go to the men. I want to hear, if you're okay with this, I want to hear your list, okay? Is anyone volunteering to share their list? All right, here we go. Let me give you the mic here.
I have 13. Start with love, hate, fear, sadness, hope, courage, perseverance, sorrow, pain, empathy, emptiness, strength, and belonging.
Hey, let's give a big round of applause. That's pretty good. Sometimes when I pick on the men, they're like, stress, pressure. I'm like, those are not feelings, my man, but I got you. I know what you mean. Well, those were great feelings. And so, man, we don't have that language sometimes. It's hard for us to even describe it. When our girlfriend broke up with us and I'm hurting, I'm wondering, man, what is this feeling? What do boys do when I work with boys who went through a breakup? What do the boys say to me? Man, if only I bought her flowers, we would still be together. What do you mean? Maybe because I saw chivalry over it. I didn't open the door. That's probably why. Our brains, we go straight to logic. If I would have done this, then we would still be together. And I'm looking at the boy or the young adolescent or the man, I'm like, it's okay that you're sad. It's okay that you're hurt. I'm not hurt. I just didn't open the door. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I feel like I didn't open the door. Yeah, that's not right. You feel sad. You feel pain. Whereas for a woman, there are 64 crayon boxes. Does anybody know all 64 crayons in that box? Well, let me help you. What a list! Last night I looked at this list and I'm like, holy cow! Okay, here, I said thistle earlier. If my wife said, can you give me that thistle crayon? I would have gone like, which one? You know, thistle, banana mania, macaroni and cheese, marvelous, tickle me pink. I mean, look, if a man is being asked to give a crayon like this and I don't have this in my box, what am I gonna do? I'm stuck. That's all I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna tell you the truth here. Before I even went to this profession, that was me. My wife, whenever we argue, she's like, boom, she's like shooting machine guns at me. And I'm like, I don't know how to fire her back. I got nothing in my ammo. But it helps to know some of these. It helps to add more to your crayon box. It helps so that we can help identify what's happening in us, so that we can model and demonstrate to our younger generations what it's like to experience some of these emotions, what it's like to be human, what it's like to have a thistle or a raw umber in your box, a Caribbean green, whatever that is. So you can actually have that in your box so that when something comes up, you can identify it. The whole point is having more awareness of our experiences as being human. So we need to up that a little bit. How do we do that? Right now, a lot of the men that I work with, the one that I hear the most is anger. It's the safest one. The safest emotion to experience and to express. Because no one's going to judge you. If you're angry, that's part of being masculine. It's part of being aggressive. That's part of having overwhelming amount of testosterone, right? So it's okay to be angry. No one's going to judge me. And so I protect that with saying, I'm fine, I'm good. But to say something like, man, I feel sad, that's such a vulnerable emotion that we don't want to get close to it, because that means we're going to be judged. So if we start to add 64 crayons into our box, then maybe we might be able to have more emotions and more words to use. Has anybody ever seen the emotion wheel before? Or the wheel of emotions? If you haven't, look it up. There's a lot. If my wife came to me and she was like, wow, you are being inquisitive. I'm like, what's that? What? Inquisitive? Let me look at this box here. Abandoned, detestable, embarrassed, betrayed, inadequate, scared, frustrated, I'm disappointed. Maybe I feel peaceful, a sense of joy. I'm sad, I'm happy, I feel excited. These are all the words that are missing. And I kid you not, when I work with men and they come to my office, some of the most common words I hear is, I feel a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. And that's usually where the conversation ends. Then we have to learn how to identify some of these emotions so that we can start being aware of what it is that's happening inside of us. Earlier, someone talked about the word emotion, or the words emotional intelligence, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to practice it. Emotional intelligence is not just understanding emotions within ourselves, but it's understanding emotions that other people are experiencing too. That when we see someone experiencing some kind of emotion, that we can be aware of it and identify what that is too. So that list that you have, what I want you to do for the next few minutes here is partner up. Partner up, and with your partner, I want you to act out that list, at least like maybe one or two, and see if your partner can guess it. To see if they can guess what emotion you're acting out. Okay, let's practice it. We're working on emotional intelligence today.
Oh, was that it? You have to guess the 20 words. So pick a word and just act it out. Pick a word. Yes. And then I thought it's like a few moments of time. This is
All right, let's come back together as a group. I see a lot of acting. Some of you need to go to acting. How was that? Was it hard? Was it easy? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Alright, we got about a midway. Okay, we got a thumbs up over here, alright? How many of you found it easy to guess? Okay, so very few hands. How many of you felt it easy to act it out? Alright, so we're struggling a little bit there. So emotional intelligence, again, is not just us understanding our own emotions, being aware of that, but also being aware of the other person too, and trying to understand what's happening within them. First, men, we struggle with that sometimes. We don't pay attention to it. We see it, but we don't know what it is, so we kind of just gloss over or glance over it. When my wife's upset, if I see her and she's upset, I might just walk past her. She gets more upset. Now I'm in trouble. But I think having that awareness helps. So when we see our kids, the signs and signals we're talking about, when they retrieve from what they're doing, they retreated, they're more quiet, more reserved, we might wonder something's going on. I might want to check in. Instead of just glossing over it, we become more aware of ourselves and what they may be feeling. I like the word you said earlier about empathy. How is this person experiencing life right now? Can I walk in their shoes to see what's going on so I can try to identify what's happening? So the whole point of this exercise is to build self-awareness, to understand more about our bodily sensations. When we feel that little, when we feel our heart racing, or we feel the stomach, or the pit of our stomach turn, what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm anxious? When our heart's racing and our hand starts to tremble and maybe it starts to get a little sweaty, what does that mean? What does that tell me? Those bodily sensations are signals. They're telling you something. I might be angry. I might be anxious. When my shoulders are tense, what does that mean? Am I anxious? Am I sad? When there's a throat, when my throat is clogged, what does that mean? So these bodily sensations, they tell us something. 80% of our communication is actually through nonverbal. I really like what Melissa said earlier, that sometimes our silence, it speaks louder. Sometimes just having that presence and not saying anything too. Silence does help too. My wife and I watched this TV show, and this guy, it was just funny, he's like, "Oh, I love you so much, but sometimes your face is just so loud." And she's like, "Oh, I got something to you." And he's like, "All right, here, wrong time. Your face is so loud." Our face, our bodily gestures, it can speak so many words. And so when we are aware of that, when we see it in ourselves or we see it in other people, that should be an indication for us that something's happening. If their face is like, right? You know they're mad, they're upset. Like, okay, something's wrong. Hey, what's going on? Tell me. Right? So self-awareness is so important. Us men, I would like us to practice more of that. To one, build a vocabulary. Two, practice that self-awareness. Starts with yourself. We can't start with other people. We have to start with ourselves first. If we're going to teach our kids, we have to learn first so that we can model it for our kids. If we're going to teach our friends and family, we too have to model that first, or to learn of ourselves first. And then we can model it. So if we can pay attention to our bodily sensations, our verbal and nonverbal expressions, then also be aware of that. That's going to help us so much more in the ways that we interact with people in the world. Your relationships will get so much better, trust me. When you can identify that something's going on, you say, "Hey, I just want to check in, man. I noticed you haven't been coming to the parties. I noticed you've been much more quiet. What's going on?" And you don't just hear them, but you see them. You see the depth of their pain, what that does for a person. The suicide part we're talking about, the guy that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, all he wanted in the interview was, "I just want someone to check in on me and say, hey, how are you doing?" Or just saying hi and seeing him so he doesn't feel so invisible. But he said he walked across that bridge and not a single person acknowledged him. And that just opened up that hopeless feeling even more. And so he decided to jump. He said, had someone said hi to me, I think I would have stopped myself. So being able to be aware of that and to check in.
Okay, can I just insert a thought?
Yes.
I think that one thing that I really did appreciate about, and I think it because I think we're losing it, is our culture. Like in Hmong, like when our parents, like they practice it so much, like when you see each other out in the public, you always cool, right?
Yes.
Whether you knew them or didn't, you would always say like, "Oh, katola," you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a practice that we shouldn't lose because again, that's in situations
I'm glad you said that because in our own culture, there's so many little pieces that have kind of fell to the wayside as we start to socialize within the Western culture. And you're right, our parents, and then whenever they see someone, even in a very remote place, they always greet each other, oh, metohala, right? They greet them. Or just listen to our language when we greet one another. We don't say hi, we say, oh, are you eating well? Are you living well? You think about those words actually point to depression too. When you think about criteria for depression, it talks about appetite. Is there a change in appetite? Are you living well? How's your mood? That's a quick check-in. And if someone says to you, oh, okay, don't stop there. Ask them, what's going on? Start having that conversation with them. But you're right, there's so many pieces that have been put to the wayside. So I know I'm running out of time here, but just another reminder that if you need someone to talk to, if you're feeling like life isn't going the way that you would hope, if you're feeling unsafe, use the resources that's available to you. 988, it's a suicide hotline. You can talk to anybody. If you're feeling that you're in a crisis, call that phone number. So I wanted just to end with this here too. Open for questions as well. If you want to get in contact with me, you certainly can. I do a lot of online coaching. Let me just be clear on this. This is online coaching, okay? This is not therapy. If you want to do therapy, that's a different thing. Whereas online coaching is more low acuity. We're not talking about trauma processing and things like that. But if you're feeling stuck, you just need some help, that's what I do. This is also my contact information as well. But I want to leave it open for questions. If you have questions, we have a few minutes here. I can ask some questions while we're still here. Yes, question.
Thank you. I appreciate how you share your own stories too, and they're very relatable. I'm wondering when in groups or I would say you could distinguish therapy from like maybe a group of friends or family. What would you suggest would be an effective way to address and hold other men accountable if they are having, they're expressing thoughts of being violent towards their family members? And what would you suggest? Or are they even thinking about being more domineering in the way that they talk about themselves, in a way where there's potential that they could, right? So I'm thinking more preventative. I think, let's just focus on preventative. What would you suggest best ways to help those who have men in their lives who need to hold other men accountable to those types of thoughts and those types of intentions?
That's such a great question. It's very relatable, especially to men's experiences. One thing that men do very well is I think of the analogy. I think of that's why I asked about animals earlier. If you pay attention to animals, there's some things we can just learn from animals, right? You put two roosters together, what's going to happen? They're going to start fighting. You put two male betas together, what happens? They're going to start fighting. Men, we have this internal drive for competition. That's what aggressiveness and that's part of our masculinity, our masculine energy. And so to your point too, if you engage with another man with that same energy, what things gonna happen? You two are gonna start fighting. You two are gonna start going at it. So I think one of the things that we can do to try to help the other person is not to accuse the other person or to point fingers at the other person. And this takes a lot of practice, and that is as men. We need to learn how to lower our ego and our pride too. What does that look like? Well, maybe instead of saying, man, you gotta stop doing that, what you're doing is wrong. Maybe if you have a good relationship, you could do that, right? But if you're just kind of starting things off, maybe that's not gonna be helpful. So what does lowering your pride and ego look like? Well, maybe it looks like this. Instead of saying you need to stop, maybe you could say some things where you start with yourself. Man, I'm worried about you. I feel really scared when you yell at your wife like that. I can't imagine what she feels like. You know, that's a vulnerable thing to say because you're lowering yourself to a position. You're not challenging that energy. But that's one way to do it, right? Similar energy. I saw a hand go up over there, yeah. You have a question too?
I do. So I'm also a psychiatric nurse practitioner in practice. So I really celebrate when I see people of color come and see me. And you had mentioned that you have maybe 2 Hmong men. Has it ever come up in conversation? What was it that made them come and see you and sought services?
I don't know. I should ask them. Yeah,
How do we get them to come out?
I really like the word model. If anybody knows anything about psychology, I think I'm more psychodynamic. I look at how past behaviors informs and shapes current behaviors, but I'm also behaviorist in the sense that I think our behaviors does get shaped by our environment, and we in return shape our environments too. So there's 4 behaviorists, big names in the word psychology: Watson, Skinner, I'm gonna get this right, Thorndike, Watson, Skinner, Thorndike. There's another one. Watson, Skinner, Thorndike. Oh, Bandura. Okay, got it. So if you study psychology, it's interesting. Okay, so there's a study with has anybody ever heard of the Bobo doll? Bobo doll. Okay, so in this study, what happened is there's a Bobo doll, a blow up clown. Looks like a clown basically. And so what they did was they wanted to see what the kids would do. What would the kids do if they watched what the parents do? You know, in other words, they're seeing what the models would do to this doll. And in the study, what the adults did was the kids are playing and they see the person part of the study come in. What does the adult do? Bobo doll standing there, swings at it, pow! And Bobo doll's like all over the place, and they kick Bobo doll, right? And so what happens? When they leave the room, they leave Bobo doll in there. What do you think happens? The kids do exactly it. I wish I could pull up the pictures. But go look it up, Bobo doll. You see the kids just, talk about like facing in their face, like they're so aggressive with this Bobo doll, kicking it, beating it up. What does that tell us? It tells us that what we model, our kids are gonna pick that up too. When I say 80% of our communication is nonverbal, it really is. Our kids, we don't need to say much at all. When they see us act a certain way, they can feel it. And so to answer your question, I don't know, maybe, I'm not trying to give myself like a pat on the back, but maybe because I'm just like, I'm a pretty chill guy. I'm not here to judge. If anything, I want to help you heal, whatever that is. We talked earlier in line getting food, and we're talking about juveniles who come in to parole. Some of these kids come from broken families, and the guard is so tight because I can't trust you. I work with mandated kids who come to see me because they've been mandated, and they're so uptight. I try to crack a joke with them, and they look at me all mad dog. I'm like, I want to help you, right? But if I match their energy, they're not going to work with me. So I crack a little joke here and there. I'll be that cringy dad, hey man, you straight fire, bro. And they laugh a little bit, and then we start talking, and then their guard lowers, and we start to work together. But we have to kind of meet them where they're at too. And so maybe I think it's modeling is what I want to say, is that if you model it, it shows nonverbals. Other questions? Yeah, come over there.
So this question has to do a little more with religion, because I know you're really into the Hmong culture, but how do people for me, for example, how would I be able to navigate a relationship with someone who comes from the traditional Hmong religion, even though I'm a Christian?
That's a hard one to answer, Christian, because you have competing values. You have values and beliefs and principles that overlap, and then you have some that are completely on the opposite ends of things, right? So how do you navigate it? I think we've been talking about it already, and that is to have the conversation. To talk about if we were to do this thing where we are bound together forever for the rest of our lives, what will be our value system in our household? And can we make space for some of these differences to exist? And more often than not, if two people are able to say, yeah, we can create space for it, I think it works out fine. Or if they're like, no, this is it, I won't budge here, there will be struggles and there will be consequences. And how do you navigate those differences? But the common denominator here is you have to have the conversation about it, to talk about it. But I have kids, so I want to think a little bit further. It gets even more challenging when you have kids. Because now you have kids, what do you teach them? Which values do you teach them? Especially when they're competing too. So before you even have kids, I would say you have to navigate that space with you and the other person first by having those conversations. Talking about it, I know it would be challenging. You might both engage in a very high tension conversation, but that's the only way to work through something is to talk about it. Because the more you put it under the rug, you pretend like it's not there, that green monster will find its way out eventually. It's going to keep knocking, especially when you brush up against it, you haven't talked about it, you pretend, it's going to come up. When Katin and Zhang are competing, I want to do it like this, especially at funerals, right? Now we want to do a Christian way. Now we're kind of caught in that middle, like earlier, the elephants group. Now we're kind of caught in the middle. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm stuck. The only way is to have that conversation, the open conversation. But to do that, I want to go back to the awareness part. To have that conversation, we need to be grounded. We need to know our capacity to engage in that conversation. Because if we can't self-regulate, we start having those high-tension conversations, we're going to end up fighting each other. We're going to cut each other with our words because they might trigger something so deep in us that we haven't worked through. So we got to do our own inner work too before you have those high-tension conversations. But point being, you have to talk about it. I don't know what my time is anymore. Where's Melissa?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, all right. We have one more question then. If anybody wants to ask one more. Over there, okay.
My question, I don't need it.
Okay.
Do you find it more effective, going back to your basketball game where you tell yourself you were good but you were not good, would you rather tell them the truth or would you rather lie to them and make them think that they're really good when they're not that good? And how do they to affect the way that they go out and how they deal with emotions from that?
Yeah, great question. I feel so guilty now. Yeah, I told you he sucked. I should have done that. I should have done a better job. But I'm a strong proponent of speaking the truth. I think when you cover it up, it just makes it even more challenging to revisit that conversation again. But I will say speaking the truth can look differently too. I think speaking the truth and being extremely blunt with the person can tarnish a relationship that was once good. If we have respect for the other person, we want to see growth in the other person, there's a way to say the truth in a way that is effective. So, I'll use myself here. Instead of saying, "Damn, you suck" to my son, I could have been, "Oh man, it's a horrible shot. Let's work on it a little bit. What if you pivot your foot a little bit? What if you hold your shot a little different? Let's try it again." Misses it again. I have to tame myself, to control myself. I gotta name it. I'm getting frustrated. I'm gonna tame it. All right, I'm not gonna use those negative words, but I might speak the truth. If it's a horrible shot, I'm not gonna say, "Man, that was a great shot." Then as I'm saying that, I might say that for the little kids, right? The little 4-year-olds, I might be like, "Oh, great shot." Yes, maybe the shot missed, but it's the effort I'm talking about. Oh, great effort. Let's try it again. But I think I'd rather speak the truth than sugarcoat and tell them something that's not really true. I think it's less effective. Because I'm thinking ahead sometimes too. What if he grows up and he's thinking, he doesn't learn how to work through these challenging times, and I haven't coached him through it. And he goes to school and his teacher says something to him or friends say something to him, and he hasn't had this experience. What's he going to do? He's going to crumble. I would rather tell him the truth. It's going to hurt a little bit, but at least I can coach him through it so he builds some resiliency. that he's learned ways to cope with it. He's had this experience. It's comfortable. I wouldn't want him to be a 40-year-old man, but emotionally he's only 12. I would rather help him build that to be in sync with his age. So I would be honest with him. In a nice way. I think that's all for today. Thank you for being here this afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to share with you.
All right, we're almost done. Hang in there. Thank you again, Dr. Yang. I think I have a few years until I can tell my son that his shot sucks, so I'll keep that in mind. All right.